We just finished a regionals that had a top 8 with every single legend being completely different. We're going to be diving into that top 8, what decks ended up making it to the top, what ones ended up falling to the wayside, and it's going to be interesting because, guys, it feels like that this meta could be wide open and that we could be severely underestimating a couple of decks. Well, we're going to be diving into all of that right now. I always love to see this kind of stuff. I mean, when you go in and you're like, all right, well, Aurelia is going to be the dominant one. Purple in general is just super, suppressive. It's the best color and all that stuff. And it's like, all right, well, here we go. Well, I don't know anymore. I thought I did. I thought I knew what this meta was going to have in store for us, and I'm questioning everything. Again, it's been really fun to watch what these interviews, because I love that they do the interviews after every single round with the winner and stuff like that. But it's still really interesting to see, after all of that, what ends up happening with just the results. I mean, we see that Viktor, it was his first regionals and was able to make his way up to second place, which is just absolutely insane. And with Viktor, nonetheless, I mean, that is something that a lot of people were counting out. Yes, in Vancouver, Viktor was able to get 9th and 11th place, which is incredibly impressive, but Viktor is still being that, he's not going to do really all that well. You bring him to your local Nexus Nights, you're like, all right, well, that's going to be an easy win, I guess, going against that, kind of thing. But it's like, is it really? It seems like that he's had a couple of difficult lines that you maybe have to work through and things like that, your pilot skill is going to need to be a little bit stronger, maybe with Viktor in particular. But man, when the cards fall, they can absolutely devastate your opponent, and they have some really solid matchups. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. Now, of course, we also have the pros that were able to make it in. I mean, Squirtle was able to get his second win of his regionals. Again, piloting Azir was able to do so in Set 2, and now has been able to do so in Unleashed. There is also a lot of footage of Squirtle playing Azir. Definitely be watching that if you're thinking about picking up Azir. Again, it was one of the 3 decks that I picked going in to Unleashed that I wanted to play. Really good budget deck in particular, though prices, of course, are probably going to be going up just a tiny bit because of people want to follow the hype that Azir has won. Now, that's going to be the big thing there. But Squirtle, again, if you want to see a masterclass on how to play Azir, you look up the gameplay of Squirtle. He has a lot of matches so far on stream. And even on top of that, he does have a guide as well that is really good that you can definitely follow along with. And then, of course, we have Challenger TCG. Colin was able to get 3rd place. He was able to get top 8 again. He was so close to making it to that finals, but just wasn't able to edge out that win to be there. He's just so close, and especially with something like Sett. Again, a deck that a lot of people aren't necessarily considering being that main focal point of top tier meta. But man, when Colin is able to pilot Sett, it is a force to be reckoned with. A guy that has been able to have a very impressive resume with Sett in particular. Even going back as far as Sett number 1, he has been able to win multiple CCSs and things like that with Sett. It's a very, very competitive deck, especially when he is behind the pilot seat. Then Dhwalley was able to make it to top 4 again, losing out to Azir, though. Very difficult matchup sometimes, especially when you are going against just such a high skill cap there. But, I mean, Dhwalley with Diana made a couple of changes from Vancouver and has been able to make those adjustments. We'll take a look at that deck list. But then we have Rek'Sai, which is just absolutely crazy right there. Again, another team right there. Darius and Rek'Sai, both friends, both teammates, and they were able to make it to 5th and 6th place, respectively. Now, I'm even looking at Darius. We even have gameplay. I watched the gameplay, and I was still like, whoa. How is this Darius deck able to even get to, a top cut? How is it able to go 11-2-1? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then you watch the gameplay and you're like, okay, I can believe in that a little bit because it's a baited hook. But normally with baited hooks, you want to go in and be a little bit more, competitive with it, with trying to get the harness dragons and things like that out. No, not in this case. Really interesting. We're going into that list. Again, Master Yi, the guy that has probably one of the highest win rates, if not the highest win rate of the meta right now at about a 57 to 58% win rate. Also just is a very competitive build in particular, and really well done here on getting 7th place. It is one of the most consistent decks, if not the most consistent deck in the meta, which is what makes it such a force to go against. That even though you might know exactly what you're getting into, the responses, the sheer might that you are able to build is just absolutely insane. Not only that, Aurelia has had probably the biggest fall of representation that we have seen yet. It went from being the number 1 deck to being like the 3rd or 4th overall, which is just absolutely insane. And Master Yi has taken that top spot. And then none other than Prismaticism is in the 8th place slot with Annie again. Again, you're taking a look at this array of competitors, and it is just looking good. I mean, you got to be just so impressed with what these guys have been able to put together here. And it does go to show, you put in the work, you're able to really be consistent, make it far, and things like that. I mean, we have Squirtle again, 2-time winner. Colin from Challenger TCG. We even had Billionaire almost make it to the top. He barely lost out at the final round on making that top cut. Dhwalley again being able to make it to the top. Mice, both of them being able there. It's just absolutely insane. Alan almost made it again. He had a little bit of a harder going with the Diana in particular. That ends up happening. Dhwalley ended up making it there in this case. So, I mean, again, you're looking at this, though, and it's like, all right, we have 2 purple decks, and we have 5. Wow, we have 5 yellow, which is just absolutely crazy there. And to think that we've had 1,900 competitors that have been able to make it to this meta, or have been able to make it to this top cut, and they're able to, perform this well. Guys, I mean, I seriously think that we have severely underestimated this meta on where things are. It is looking really good. And I gotta say, I'm pretty dang impressed. Now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the decks. So, first place is gonna be Azir from Squirtle. Again, just a really awesome guy, down to earth, super solid player and competitor at that. And Azir, again, it's not necessarily something that you can sleep on. I mean, we've seen Rocklow that was able to get top 8 as well with Azir, was barely able to lose out at that top 8 spot. I think he ended up in 6th at the end when all was said and done. Really sad to be able to see that. And then on top of that, just is a very consistent deck as well. I know that Rocklow specifically said that out of like 15 games, you're going to probably brick one of them. How do you brick? Well, you might miss out on like all the 1-drops that you might have in particular. In this case, you are running 12. That is one of the highest percentages of having a turn 1 play that you can possibly have here. That's going to be one of the biggest things. So, you don't worry about running a, 2-drop because it's like, oh, well, it's going to be 1 might, it's going to be 2 might. No, all of yours are going to be coming in for 3, which is one of the biggest benefits that you have in going for Azir, that pretty much your minimum might for every unit that you have, of course, outside of Scuttlecrab, but, we love the guy. He's a cute guy. Anyway, but with that, we don't worry about that in particular because we already have so much going for us as it is. Now, we also have Azir. Now, the champion I love because he can be your get out of jail card. If you end up finding yourself getting in a little bit of trouble, you can create a couple of tokens kind of thing on the turn before, let your opponent maybe set up a little bit. You take over one battlefield, you accelerate out Azir, you charge into the other battlefield, you bring all those tokens with you, including the ones that are still tapped, and you're able to absolutely take down the other battlefield, and that can usually be enough to take the game from your opponent. So there's a lot of things that they do have to be prepared for, which is something that is so fun to be able to watch. And that's the thing. I love that Azir is able to match the aggro game early on and then still be able to have those finishing moves at the end. That you have stuff like Azir, you have things like Arise that are both very powerful combinations for you to be able to do things. Now, Arise in particular, you're going to be able to play a 2 Might Sand Soldier token for each equipment that you control, and then you ready 2 of them. This is for 6 and a power. And if you have 4 or more gear, you're sitting pretty at that point because, I mean, you're just getting a lot of utility. There was times when I had 6 equipment out and I'm just like, all right, cool, thank you. I'm going to get 6 units. 2 of them are going to be ready, and then you're just going to have to deal with that. Now, that's going to be probably sometimes the make or break here, though, is if you end up missing a rise, that you might end up missing a little bit of your game in this case, which can sometimes be a difficult thing. Now, you do have some good card draw to help you out with that. You do have Death Grip, which is going to kill a friendly unit and then give you +1, or then give you the plus might equal to the might of the sacrificed unit. Then you're going to be able to draw 1. You also have the Disciplines, which is +2 and draw 1. 3 Hidden Blades, which is kill something, draw 2. And also even some back off to where if you play it from your hand, you get to draw 1. So a couple of options there, and we've seen a couple of different variants too. Shadow's Call, for instance, is one that you can also utilize, where you are going to be able to give temporary to one of your units and then draw 2 off of that immediately. That can be the same thing as Hidden Blade without needing to necessarily sacrifice the unit. You can still attack in and sacrifice that unit after you've given it temporary. I do like the 2 back off. This is something that I think a lot of people are not quite prepared for. When you think about like what you're going to be going against, a lot of times when you're attacking and you're not thinking, I'm going to get stunned. Not in particular. Now, when you're going against something like LeBlanc and they have 5 up, you're like, all right, well, they've got a Vi at that point. But you're not thinking that they have, a 3-cost back-off spell that is going to be stunning you, or even that it's hidden. 90% of the time that you see a hidden card, you're thinking, when going against Azir at least, that it is a Hidden Blade. That's going to be something that I think is something that is so smart to be able to catch your opponent off guard. Now, also, when testing this deck, when talking with Rocklo and trying to figure out which version and following his guide and his variances that he's been able to make with his deck, there's been a huge debate on if you even run Scuttlecrab or Vi. Vi has been a guaranteed run at this point. She's just so good, gets you out of a lot of trouble when you are trying to, get over that big might. Just adds so much to the battlefield. Scuttlecrab is one that I've seen 2 and 2 for Scuttlecrab and Vi. But Scuttlecrab has fallen to the wayside, and Vi has kind of been like that guarantee at least 1 of, if not a 2 of. Now, Scuttlecrab is still really good because, again, you need that card draw sometimes, and so I can see exactly why you would want to run the Scuttlecrab. Also, just even getting the hand knowledge, you have a 2-drop that you're ready to just sacrifice to the wind at that point. You're just going to be like, hey, you have a 1-might unit? All right, that's fine. Sometimes you might have a gear, you might attach a brutalizer, get a unit out of it maybe, but regardless, you're going to throw in Scuttlecrab to the Wolves to be able to see what your opponent has in hand. That's the kind of stuff that you love to see, because then you have your opponent's hand knowledge, you know exactly what they're preparing for, and you're able to match that. Again, this is just a very good, well-rounded deck that is able to do a lot. One thing that is very interesting too is that normally we have 1 salvage in the main deck. There's no salvage in the main deck here. And then normally also there's 2 or 3 charms as well. But in this case, all of that was sideboarded. Instead, putting in back off, maybe even a Scuttlecrab, and even Death Grips, making room for Death Grips, which I think is a great addition to this deck. And he was able, of course, to get first place, which is just so cool to be able to see. Now, next is Viktor. Now, the reason why I love Viktor so much is because he feels like that he's always been that deck that gets counted out. That when you go against it, you're just like, yeah, Viktor's going to maybe have a little bit of a tough game, going to be calling the weak of a couple of my units and things like that, but who cares? It's not a big deal. And then after each and every set, it seems like that Viktor keeps getting a little bit better and better, but again, it's still kind of tossed to the wayside. I mean, we get Zhao, which is a really good card that when you have 2 or more other units that he's ready to, he enters ready. He also has tank. That's something that a lot of people forget about because you're normally not going to be utilizing it for that reason. And then he comes in at 4 might. So to be able to have that unit ready is a really big deal. Now, not only that, you also have Carrion Dredger, a great addition to this deck, saying that when it dies that you're able to play a bird to the base. That bird, of course, has deflect, and the wider that you're able to go, the better for this deck. You also have just amazing parts like Sprite Fountain, which if you have that in your opening hand, you're immediately going up to 2 points, something that your opponent just cannot prepare for, which is just really cool. 3 Call of the Weeks, again, for board control, which is solid. And then you also have the finishing moves, which is going to be like Vi, Thousand Tail Watcher, which is just going to be absolutely good. 3 Imperial Decrees, which means that any and all damage is enough to kill a unit, and Bellows Breath, one of the biggest combos of this game, that you go Imperial Decree and Bellows Breath, and you can essentially get a board wipe at that point. Now, of course, we are seeing Shadow's Call at this deck too. Sometimes you don't run it in Viktor, sometimes you do. In this case, you are going to be giving temporary to probably one of your 1-might tokens to be able to draw 2. Again, just a very big help, especially because sometimes you are going to need to be saving your Hidden Blades to take out those dangerous units that you might not be able to get around. Eclipse, also another really great addition to this. At reaction speed, you're able to add -4 to a unit. If you're able to deal a little bit of damage to it beforehand and then give -4 to it, Wages of Pain, then Eclipse, or if you're attacking in, they have a couple of responses, they discipline, they do whatever they need to be able to get over the might that you're dishing out, and then you just react with an Eclipse to -4 and be able to predict, again, another piece that a lot of people forget about, then it is a really solid option to be able to get that momentum that you desperately need. Now, that's going to be one of the hardest things about Viktor, and something that I think that he's starting to make an adjustment on now. Viktor does a really good job at being able to take the battlefields over and over again. He does a great job at being able to control the board. Where he can suffer, though, is trying to defend. A lot of times you're going to be finding yourself that, you're going to be losing both battlefields essentially each and every time, and that you're going to be relying on the Cold of Weeks or on your Bellows Breath and stuff like that to be able to hold, by controlling the battlefield so much so that they have to spend a turn essentially rebuilding. If you can even hold once without necessarily needing to do that, you're going to be in a really good spot. Again, I love what Viktor is able to do. There's a guy at our local scene that has been bringing Viktor, and it's a deck that, again, you can't underestimate. And I think if you do underestimate, then you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. And I think that's really why Viktor is sometimes able to do so well in this meta, is because, you're like, okay, well, this is a guaranteed win. The guy's just playing this because, it's a budget deck or whatever it might be, he ends up loving Viktor, whatever it might be. And then it's able to just dish out the answers left and right. I love what this list is able to do, and I love what was able to happen here with this list. Now, if you haven't seen this finals, I highly recommend going back and watching this match, because it was just such a dynamic match back and forth. I remember watching the chat, and a lot of people were just like being like, oh, well, Azir's going to just 2-0 this, And there's even a winning path to where Viktor could have actually won the game 1, something to be watching out for. Really interesting to see how that goes down. But watch this series. It is such an interesting way to see how back and forth this is. Something that a lot of people were counting out. We didn't think that there was going to be as many answers here, in particular, that Azir would just be able to arise and steamroll, or, they're going to be able to create bigger units each and every turn. And no, that's not the case. This was really a grind of a match where you had to be extremely calculated with how you go about each and every turn. And you're even seeing now that Squirtle had to be in the tank for this for a while. And I mean, it is just very showing that, again, Viktor can be that deck, that it can be one of those top decks. I remember us talking about when we saw what yellow and blue were getting as a color combination, that it could be that tier 1 deck when we were doing reveal season with Unleashed. And then LeBlanc came in and everyone was just like, oh yeah, Viktor's out of the picture. No, not by any means. I mean, you take a look again, and again, watch this finals match. It is absolutely thrilling. Maybe watch it on 2x so you don't have to watch the tanking, but it was just a really good time to see what ended up happening. Next, of course, is going to be Sett by Colin. Now, he's had a great track record each and every time. Love to see what he's been able to do with Sett. He's made some adjustments each and every time that he's been able to take this to a major tournament. And there's been tournaments that he's done really well in, or really good regionals that he's done really well in, and some that he's just almost gotten there. I think Vancouver was one of his hardest ones. He did decent in Sydney and things like that. But that's one of the hardest things there, is that he was just so close every time on getting into that finals. And I think that Colin it's not a matter of if but when that he's going to be able to make it to that point. And Sett is just such a difficult deck to be able to pilot. But man, when you understand the balance and the ups and downs of it and how everything ends up maneuvering, it is just a really powerful deck at that point. Now, you're still able to get some really great pieces here. Irresistible Faithful can be just an amazing option to be able to, when you move to a battlefield, you just get to charm in a unit. And a lot of times you're just going to be winning that battle. Usually it is going to be at the sacrifice of the Faithful. We have seen, like in Rengar, though, that you are going to be playing like the Fountain, where you can move that unit back when you play a ambush unit in. In this case, we have 2 ambush units, which is pretty solid, and that's going to be Rengar and Vi. Again, 2 of the best cards of this set you're able to run in this deck, and I think that's going to be one of the big difference makers here, too. Rengar. Again, I put Rengar as the number 2 most powerful deck of the set, only to Elder Dragon to being stronger. I think that Rengar at this point is the strongest deck of this set. It's just been able to do absolute amazing things in particular, and is just a devastating force. And in something like Sett, for example, that you can ambush in and then potentially give a buff in this case to be able to make sure that he survives. It's 5 energy, 1 power for 6 might. And then you also gave it ambush and the ability to Dead Bloom for 5 and a power. That is just crazy to me on the cost there. And it's a big complaint of a lot of people, but I mean, it's because it is such a powerful card. If you do end up going against orange, you're just like, all right, well, you're probably running Rengar. I got to prepare for that. And yeah, you do. And then on top of that, they have a couple of really solid buffs here. You have the ways to be able to add your own buffs. You have Punch First, which is going to add +5. You have Showstopper, which is going to be absolutely solid to be able to charge right in. You can play out your Vi if you don't want to ambush in and you want her to be able to survive, and you can Showstopper, whatever you want to do. Again, it's just got the best of both worlds in this deck on just being an absolute force to be reckoned with. Now, again, this deck still does struggle with its card draw. You have like 1 Hidden Blade. All right, cool. Not really a whole lot there. Otherwise, you are going to be initially top decking. You're relying on your battlefields to do a lot more of the drawing for you. You have the Monastery of Hirana, which is going to be, you can spend a buff to be able to draw 1, and you have Grove of the Godwillow, which when you hold here, you are able to draw 1. Now, of course, Grove of the Godwillow is going to be the one that you utilize when you are going first. Otherwise, you are going to be finding yourself maybe in a little bit of trouble at that point. But I mean, Colin was able to do just incredibly well, getting into that 3rd place, losing to Azir, though. Again, a deck that we thought, I thought that Colin had a great chance of being able to make it in, and rightfully so, just had a lot of answers here that he was able to dish out. But no, not by any means. I mean, again, Azir is able to just continue to bombard here with just a lot of momentum and being incredibly consistent turn after turn, which could be so difficult sometimes to try to dish out here. So even at this point, going to be going in and sacrificing to add the +2 there. And again, I think that's got to be one of the biggest things that you just got to be watching out for as a Sett player. If you're thinking about maybe coming up with this deck in particular, it's like, what are we wanting to do in this case? And you got to know your matchups. You got to know what this deck is able to do. And then on top of that, you need to be able to have those kinds of responses. And when it comes down to it, and you have to top deck, it can be a little bit of a difficult battle for you to be able to maintain. And that's why I think Grove of the Godwillow and your card draw is going to be so vital. But then when it comes down to it, you also need to be able to balance how many runes that you are able to maintain. And if you aren't able to, it's going to be just a very difficult situation for you to be able to continue to get to this point of trying to win out on your games here. So we'll see what's able to be done. I think that this is going to be just a really solid deck, though I think also we aren't going to necessarily be seeing more of Sett maybe at your local Nexus Nights by any means, because it is going to be one that Colin just continues to pilot, and it's not going to necessarily see a whole lot of play outside of that. So we'll see, but still, Sett is going to be absolutely solid. Next is going to be Diana, which is just, again, a really solid deck in particular. We've seen what Dhwalley was able to do. He had a great showdown going against Alan last 2 weeks ago in Vancouver, and Alan, of course, ended up winning out on that one. Now, Dhwalley has made a couple of changes. Kha'Zix has made his way right back in. We also have Sprite Fountain, which, again, is in the deck. Again, that's a one of. We still have 2 Gusts, which is pretty solid in a lot of matchups. A great way to slow down your opponent because, again, it's going to be that Diana is a deck that really can thrive at the late game. That's going to be the big thing here. You're still going to have a lot better of a board presence than what maybe you saw going against Ezreal in particular. You know, you have that early game answers with like Sprite, Fountain, Tide, Turn of Traveling, Raven Blue. You have a lot of great stuff. And Diana, I think, is going to be one of the biggest differences as to why you have such a bigger advantage compared to, you know, Ezreal and what he had. I mean, first off, the legend ability, huge, being able to add an energy when you are in Showdown. That is a big benefit right there. Your opponent goes into Showdown, and you can then gust them with your legend. You can also just do a stat deck. Whatever it might be, you're able to do so. Then Diana, your champion, you're able to move in, use the legend ability to add the +1 to be able to look essentially at 2 cards, and if one is a spell, you can choose to add that to hand. Now, of course, if the first one's a unit, you can put it to the bottom of the battle or bottom of the deck and then look at the next one. And if it's a spell, then you can add that to hand. You have to reveal it, of course. But still, that's a crazy card right there. And you got so many different dynamics that you're able to utilize here. You got some gear destruction that you're having to do because of the Aurora matchup. You also have a lot of might control. You have Vex, which is able to stun units, so if they're trying to attack in, they might have to use a turn to be able to rebuild. You have Wei, which is just one of the best cards of the set. I would even put this in the top 5, if not number 3 at this point. Just being able to draw one, then discard one, and it can be literally anything, and you just get such a great benefit off of it. One of the biggest problems, though, is that Diana does a really good job at getting rid of might, but it can really struggle with trying to get their own might over a particular threshold. I think that's why Kha'Zix is definitely included in this, is because you are going to be able to, pop in Kha'Zix and could potentially be 6 might that is able to attack in at that point. That's going to be the hard thing. Yes, you have things like Eclipse and things like that, but if you end up losing out on a couple of these answers, and you need to get to like 7, 8, 9 might, and you don't have Way or things like that, you could really be struggling against like those green and orange decks. And like going against Aurelia and things like that. Stuff that you have to be definitely prepared for. There's still going to be a couple of options that you have. I mean, again, Ravenbloom Student is going to be a great way to be able to do so, especially with something like Abandoned Hall, where you get to add +1 might for each spell that's able to go through. Really good there. And then you just have a lot of great options in particular. But again, I think that's going to be the biggest thing here, is that you need to be able to control the battlefield a little bit better and make sure that your opponent is not getting so far ahead. And if they are, then you're just going to be finding yourself in trouble here. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that Dhwalley is able to do so masterfully, is be able to maintain the battlefield and the board control. And again, if you're struggling with learning Diana, I know that I am in particular, watch Alan, watch Dhwalley on what they are able to do, how they are able to pilot here, because the decision making that they have is just next level, and I love what they are able to bring to the table here, especially with everything in particular that they have. Now, we got to be watching out for the, again, gosh, it's got to be that Master Yi is one of the 50-50 most matchups into Diana. That's got to be one of the things that you watch out for the most. And who ends up drawing better? You got to be worried about your defies, your spell control at this point, because you are going to be finding yourself all of your spells being 1 power and under 4 energy. And so a lot of your stuff is going to be defied here. That's going to be one of the hardest parts here. But again, I got to say, Diana is arguably probably the best deck. I want to say that Diana is probably one of the most explosive decks, that it can just be an absolutely devastating board state that you have to deal with. That is just so incredibly fun to have to pilot and play. But at the same time, if you're missing out on a couple of pieces, then you're just not necessarily going to be able to be there. And so watch out for it, though. It is just a force to be reckoned with, and one that is just so fun to be able to watch. Next, of course, is going to be Rek'Sai. Again, we've been counting Rek'Sai out, and even over in China, Rek'Sai was able to get 2 in the top 8. And we're like, okay, yeah, did that feel like a little bit of a fluke? Sure, maybe. But now Rek'Sai was able to get in the top 8 after 1,900 competitors. I mean, 3 times more than what was seen in China, which is just absolutely crazy. And you take a look at this deck and you see why. I've gone against Rek'Sai a couple of times on TCG Arena, and yeah, it can be a difficult deck to try to go against at this point. One that's just very fun, but you got to be so careful on how you go about this, because you're going to be having to really conquer to extend your hand size by 2 to potentially try to play out units. And a lot of times you do not want to play out a unit first to try to get things going in this case. There's also just some really good moments that you're able to have with this deck. You conquer a battlefield, you reveal your top 2 cards with the Rek'Sai Legend ability, and then you're able to see like Under Titan and Void Rush. This happened in a match that I was going against yesterday, where they revealed Under Titan and Void Rush, and I was just like, oh gosh, because Under Titan added +2, Void Rush was able to be played for one recycled. They had a gear out that was able to cover the power cost, and then they were able to look at the top 2 and reduce the cost by 2. Just crazy stuff right there on how they're able to go about that. You also have Rengar that is able to be played at reaction speed to be able to attack in at 5, which is just really good. Then also you have Pyke, which is able to be aggroed in. You can also hide him, which is just a very nice little bit of a plot twist. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with Rek'Sai. The fact that you were able to get another top 8 is just really cool to be able to see. You have Vi here that is able to get that finishing move of discarding or returning all these cards to your deck to get the might up of Vi to be able to move into battlefields and conquer. Really good option there. You have the Forerunner that is able to do a lot. Falling Star, which is just such a devastating answer for so many in this deck. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed with what this deck is able to do. You're going to be creating tokens. You're going to be having the ambush come in. You're going to be having aggression from Pyke, from Rengar, and stuff like that. You're going to be able to also just, you have everything here that you could possibly want. Again, though, some of the shortcomings is that you aren't going to necessarily be having the card draw, and that there are times that this deck can brick, that you're not going to be having the answers found when you necessarily need them. That can be one of the hardest parts about this. But if you are able to find the answers, man, does it feel good. Under Titan as your end game finisher can be amazing. Being able to add +2 to all your units, that is something that is just going to be absolutely taking down your opponent at that point. Just really love these options. Love what Rek'Sai is able to do. You have Cole the Weak as well with a bunch of this. And you're going to be creating a lot of one might units anyway. So you might as well be sacrificing them to really take out those important units that your opponent is going to be holding. Again, I love what Rek'Sai is able to do here. And I'm thinking that Rek'Sai is moving into that A tier, that tier 1 style of deck, because it has been able to do so incredibly well each and every time. Now, you are going to be having your tougher matchups in particular. You might be able to go into Aurelia pretty well, but going against like a Master Yi, going against a Diana could be very difficult. If they're able to deal with a lot of your board states, stop you from being able to conquer, then you're going to be finding yourself having a very hard time here. But that's going to be one of the best benefits that you have, is that if you're going against the decks that really benefit of you going in and not necessarily being able to go wide, if they can't handle you being able to go wide, then you have just amazing momentum here. And so we'll see what is able to be done. I think Rek'Sai is going to be continuing to see more and more support as we go further into Unleashed. And man, does this meta just feel so incredibly well. Absolutely love this. And, Rek'Sai is able to have some just intense games. Again, this is one to definitely be watching. Billionaire versus Rami Kiano. If I said that wrong, I am so sorry. But because it was just such an intense match, and you get to see exactly why Rek'Sai can be one of those top contenders. Next, of course, is going to be the Darius. Again, another one that we're really counting out here. I did not think that Darius was going to be, one that was going to be making into the top cut. And Batsu is just in my ear now saying, I told you so. I know Batsu. Yeah, and I know. But anyway, you get the idea. Darius is one that's been counted out for so long that after set 1, it was already considered like that outlier rogue deck. And now you're coming in and seeing that it got a top 8? What? Kind of thing. What's going on with this? And on top of that, it's a hook deck. And on top of that, you take a look and you're like, okay, cool. You got, Safety Inspector. You got Vi. Okay, I guess. Why are we running this kind of stuff? And it's like, oh, okay. I can see maybe a couple of pieces here on why you would want to run this. Now, it still is going to look like just an absolutely complicated deck, and it is. That's going to be one of the biggest things. But you have a lot of pieces that you are able to maneuver through. Again, though, maybe lingering a little bit on the card draw, but you're able to just do a whole lot of great stuff here. Again, Vi, it's becoming that staple in any yellow deck that you're able to go against or you're able to pilot. Really good answer on being able to do just devastating stuff to your board state. Falling Star, really good. Safety Inspector, you're going to be able to basically call the weak while being able to play out a 3-might unit. Really solid there. There's also ways to get that out with Baited Hook incredibly easily. You can sacrifice an Honest Broker to find a Safety Inspector at that point. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Kind of thing. Still, though, this is just a very interesting deck list that I am continuing to keep an eye on. This is one that I'm also going to be testing, because I want to see what makes this deck thrive. What is something that continues to just make this deck be able to win the games that it's able to win? Because when I take a look at this deck list, I just don't see it. I don't know what's going on here, but still, it's definitely one to be watching out for. Now, Master Yi was able to get 7th place, again, being able to crack into the top 8. Orange seems to be in the debate of how good is it really? It's been able to do all right, and what is it necessarily able to do in accompanying green? I mean, we've been able to see that Sett was able to make top 8. Master Yi is now able to make it too. And again, we're seeing that what these colors can really do. And I think Master Yi in particular is really starting to find his groove here. You're able to get +2 when defending alone. That's going to be one of the best pieces. But then you get 2 of your most powerful avenues to go down. You have Ruin Runner, which is going to not be able to be chosen by spells and abilities. And that shuts down so many decks. Aurelia, Diana, LeBlanc. I mean, you see Ruin Runner and you just pull out your hair at that point. Rengar, going to be able to ambush in. And then you can do Surprise Defender, and Rengar is going to be at 8. That sometimes is so difficult, even if you're anticipating that is going to be the answer. That can still be very difficult to try to prepare for. Then not only that, Primal Strength has made a return, being able to add +7 to a unit. You do have to play around a couple of things, worrying about things like Abandoned or Hard Bargain or things like that, Defies, whatever it might be. But man, there's times when, you're dishing out so much, hey, Charm, oh, well, I'm going to defy that. Or, you see just what they're able to dish out, and hey, by the way, you don't have a Defy in hand. All right, Primal Strength +7, going to take over this battlefield. When you're able to make a first mate go to 10, a Scuttle Crab go to 7, or like a Pit Rookie go to 9. That kind of stuff can really, again, devastate your opponent's board state and make it so difficult for them to be able to, come back in. That they have these big units that are just going to be so difficult to try to maintain here. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that I absolutely love about this deck. Not only that, too, running the 2 Akshans is just an absolutely solid option. If you just happen to not go against one that has gear, all right, that's fine. But if you're going against Aurelia and you're able to just steal their Guardian Angel, even if they then kill the Akshan, the Guardian Angel just goes right back to their trash. They don't get it back because Akshan's still alive and Guardian Angel was utilized. It's just such a mean play. I've even been able to steal a Trinity Force with someone that was playing Lucian and was able to win the game by attaching it to my Lonely Poro, and he just held until the very end. That was a funny game. Anyway, but you get the idea that there is a lot here that you got to be so careful of. Scuttle Crab, just an absolutely crazy combo piece here, especially with Emperors, because what you're able to do is play Scuttle Crab, go into Emperors, pay 1 after the Conquer, be able to bounce Scuttle Crab back for a 2-mite. You can play Scuttle Crab out again, and then be able to draw another card. So for 5, you're able to get 2 cards drawn, 2 units out, and one's going to be able to defend for 4 with another one ready to attack in as needed. Just really crazy stuff right there. You also have Grim Resolve, which is going to be pretty solid too. Again, you can debate on whether or not you want to run Grim Resolve. It can be countered or defied, but again, that +3, especially without a power cost, can be pretty dang good. And you're going to be finding yourself a lot of times having, a +2 or, having 2 runes left over at this point. And I think that's exactly why you are going to be running it, is Grim Resolve is just going to be the absolute powerhouse of an option. Otherwise, a lot of this deck is the same that we've always been seeing, and it's just going to continue to be that force to be reckoned with. I'm going to be curious to see how it ends up going at Hartford. It's one that I am going to be piloting myself, one that I've been practicing a ton on in this case, and I am excited to see what is going to be the results of this powerful deck. Next, of course, is going to be Prismaticism's Annie, the final deck of this top 8. Now, again, we're not going to dive into this too much. We've already seen Prismaticism a lot in this case, but again, you got to respect the player, man. Being able to have so many top 8 runs here, and he just knows Annie backwards and front. There is no other way around it. You're able to see just what devastating stuff he is able to utilize turn after turn. And yeah, again, watch his top 8 match, watch whatever match that you want that he is in. I still will argue that he has the best finals finish of any regional so far. Again, versus Coco versus Prismaticism in Atlanta for the end of set 2 was just one of the best regional finals that I have ever seen, easily. And you take a look at this deck now in set 3, and it's able to do so much. The Purple Vex is adding such a new dynamic. Inferna, great option there. You also have just amazing things like Starcross that you're able to utilize. Longsword, great option. Cleave, that's going to add +3. You have some draw with Stack Deck. Now, you are going to be maybe struggling a little bit sometimes with your card draw, that you are going to have 2 or 1 card in hand. That can be where you really start to fall short and what you got to be so careful about. But at the same time, if you are able to even maintain some hand draw, you're able to, hold down some battlefields, trick out some long swords and things like that, it can be a very good time for you to be able to take down your opponents and really surprise them. Not only that, being able to ready up 2 runes at the end of every turn is just giving you so much more access to what you could potentially be playing. Whether that be Flash, Abandon, Hard Bargain, Stack Deck. If you have 3 up, you can play out Rengar or Starcrossed, whatever it might be. You're going to be finding yourself in an absolutely great spot. I love Annie. If you guys haven't tried Annie, I highly recommend it. I think that it is one of the best decks that you are able to pilot at this point, and it's a force to be reckoned with. I think that it has a lot of versatility and something that is so fun to be able to pilot. So with that being said, guys, that is our top 8 of our EU regionals. And man, was it an absolute thriller. Great job to the casting production team. I love how they continue to keep trying out new features, new graphics and things like that each and every regionals. It's going to be an absolute blast. If you guys are going to be at Hartford too, always feel free to come up and say hi to me. Definitely going to be a great time there. Just love this competitive scene and love that I get to be a part of it. So with that being said, guys, if you are traveling, have safe travels. If you are going to be going to your locals, what are you going to be taking now at this point? I mean, right now we're at the middle. I mean, pretty much the dead middle of Set 3. And guys, it is feeling absolutely great. Is it a much wider meta than we thought? Oh, heck yeah. And with that being said, that is it for now. And until next time, guys, have a good time. Wow. No, have a good one. Yeah. Have a good one.